The ship was quiet. Too quiet for Dr. Emily Foster. She had been on the mission for days now, helping the alien species on their distant planet. It was supposed to be routine, nothing special, just another call for a medic. But everything changed when the message came through. The distress signal. It was not a request for help. It was a trap. Emily stood in the small, cold medical bay of the alien ship, her hands steady as she prepared her tools. She had been brought aboard after the alien crew had rescued her from a crash site. They had spoken of a dangerous unknown illness affecting their people, and she was their last hope for a cure. Or so they said. The tension in the air was thick. The crew had grown quiet ever since they had entered the deep, uncharted space. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The silence was unnatural. The usual chatter and activity of the ship had disappeared, replaced by a quiet that made her skin crawl. Her medical training told her to stay calm, but her instincts screamed at her to be careful. As she moved through the corridors, the soft hum of the ship's engines beneath her feet was the only sound she could hear. It was then that she noticed something strange. Alien soldiers, standing in tight formation, their eyes scanning the hallway. She had seen them before, but today, their posture was different. Tense, aggressive. Suddenly, a sharp voice echoed down the hall. "Human medic, come with me." She froze. The door in front of her slid open with a hiss, revealing a dark, empty room. The light flickered above her head, and she stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't want to go, but there was no choice. She knew something was terribly wrong, but there was no way out. The moment the door sealed shut behind her, a sudden sound made her blood run cold. The clicking of claws echoed from the far corner of the room, and then they appeared. Figures, tall and cloaked in shadow, their eyes glowing like bright stars in the dark. They were not the crew she had been working with. No, these were something else, something much more dangerous. A voice, cold and chilling, broke the silence. "You were never meant to be here." Emily's breath caught in her throat as the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. This wasn't an illness she had been brought to treat. She wasn't being rescued. She had been captured. The aliens had tricked her, lured her aboard their ship under false pretenses. The figures around her moved closer, their eyes never leaving her. She stood frozen, trying to remain calm. The ship was no longer just a place of refuge. It had become a prison, and she was the prisoner. "Take her to the holding cells," the voice ordered, and before she could react, two strong alien hands grabbed her arms, pulling her forward. She struggled, but their grip was like steel. She knew she wasn't going to win a fight against them. Her only hope was to survive. They marched her through the ship's dark, narrow halls, the walls lined with cold metal. There was no escape, no way out. The air was thick with tension as the crew watched her, their eyes filled with both fear and something darker, hatred. The holding cells were located deep in the bowels of the ship. As they passed through a set of heavy steel doors, Emily's mind raced. She had been a medic for years, had treated all kinds of wounds and injuries, but nothing had prepared her for this. She was a human among aliens, alien captors who feared her kind. Why? She didn't know yet, but she would find out. Once inside the cell, the doors slammed shut with a deafening clang. The room was small, bare, with only a cot and a small window that looked out into the blackness of space. There was no way to communicate with anyone outside, no way to escape, and yet Emily felt a strange sense of calm. She had survived many situations in the past. She wasn't about to give up now. As she sat on the cot, her mind worked quickly. Who were these aliens? Why had they captured her? What did they want? She wasn't just a medic. She had fought in wars, saved countless lives, and seen things no one should have to. And now, it seemed, she was about to face her greatest challenge yet. From the small window, she could see the stars swirling outside the ship. The emptiness of space was overwhelming. But Emily had always felt a strange connection to the vastness of the universe. It was as if it gave her strength. No matter how many enemies there were, how much danger surrounded her, she had learned to survive. And she would survive this too. But then, something caught her eye. The ship wasn't moving randomly through space. No, it was moving toward something. Something large. Emily's eyes narrowed as she studied the pattern. The ship was heading straight toward a massive space station, one that wasn't on any map she had seen. Whatever was happening, this was no ordinary ship, and she was no ordinary captive. As the minutes ticked by, Emily's mind began to formulate a plan. She wasn't going to sit idly by. She had to act, had to learn as much as she could about these aliens, their weaknesses, their intentions. And then she would escape. Her hand gripped the edge of the cot, her mind still racing. She couldn't let fear take over. Not now. Not when everything was on the line. The door to her cell opened again. This time, it wasn't the aliens who had captured her. It was someone different. Someone more dangerous. And just like that, Dr. Emily Foster's fight for survival had only just begun. Emily sat on the cot, her body tense, and her mind racing. The door had opened again, but this time it wasn't the alien guards who had captured her. The figure that stood in the doorway was cloaked in a dark uniform, its design unfamiliar. The soft hum of the ship's engines was the only sound that filled the silence as Emily watched the shadowy figure step inside her cell. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had been in dangerous situations before. She could handle this. She had to. The figure finally broke the silence. "You are human." The voice was low, almost mechanical, as if it were struggling to speak. Dr. Emily Foster, correct. Emily didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied the figure closely. It was taller than any of the aliens she had encountered on the ship, and it moved with an unnatural grace. Its eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed faintly with an eerie blue light, and its features were hidden behind a mask. It looked more like a machine than a living being. "Who are you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The figure didn't respond right away. It simply stepped further into the room, its footsteps echoing in the silence. Emily's eyes narrowed as she watched it. This was no ordinary alien. Something about this being felt off, dangerous in a way she couldn't fully comprehend. "My name is not important," the figure finally said. "What matters is what you will become. You were brought here for a reason, Doctor." Emily's brow furrowed. "What reason?" "I was brought here under the guise of helping you with an illness. That's all I know." The figure's glowing eyes seemed to narrow in response. "The illness was never the reason. You are here because of what you are, because of who you are." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The way it spoke sent a wave of dread crashing through her. She had been tricked. She wasn't here because they needed a medic. They had brought her here for something far darker. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure took a step closer to her. "Humanity is more than you realize. You are not like other species. Your race possesses a unique potential, a potential that the galaxy is not ready for." Emily shook her head in confusion. "What are you talking about? I'm just a medic. I'm nothing special." "You're wrong," the figure replied, its voice growing more intense. "You are the key to something much larger, something that could change everything. And we've been watching you, watching your species, for a long time." The door behind them slid open with a hiss, and another figure stepped into the room. This one was different. It was shorter, more agile, with sharp, predatory features that glowed a sickly green in the dim light. Its eyes locked onto Emily, and she felt a wave of unease wash over her. "This is the one," the new figure said, its voice dripping with malice. "The human we need. She's the one who will lead us to victory." Emily stood up quickly, her heart racing. "Lead you? Lead you to what? What do you want from me?" The figures exchanged a glance, then turned their attention back to her. "Your species," the tall figure began, "is the missing piece we've been searching for. You are the key to unlocking the power we need, and now that we have you, nothing can stop us." Emily's mind spun. Power? What kind of power? What are you planning? The shorter alien stepped forward, its face twisted into a grin. "We're planning to reshape the galaxy, to bring it under our control. And you, Doctor, are going to help us do that." Emily's stomach dropped. She had heard whispers of galactic conquerors before, alien factions bent on dominating the universe, but she had never imagined she would be caught in the middle of such a plan. The idea of being used for something so dark made her feel sick to her core. "Why me?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "What do you need me for?" The tall figure paused for a moment, as if considering the question. Then it spoke. "You humans are different. You possess something that other species do not, something that we've been trying to harness for centuries. A unique kind of resilience, a way of surviving that no other species has. You can survive things that would destroy others. That is the power we need. With your help, we can create an army unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen." Emily's heart raced. She realized then that her role in their plan wasn't to heal or help. She was to be a weapon to help these aliens conquer the stars. The thought made her sick. "You're using me," she said, her voice barely audible as she tried to push past the rising fear. "I won't help you." The figure smiled, a cruel smile that sent shivers down her spine. "You don't have a choice. You'll help us, or you'll die trying." The door to the cell slammed shut again, leaving Emily alone with the horrible truth. She had been captured, not as a medic, but as a tool, a pawn in someone else's war. And now she was trapped in a ship full of enemies, with nothing but her wits and her will to survive. As the reality of her situation sank in, Emily's mind began to race. She had to find a way out. There had to be a way to fight back. She couldn't let them use her. She couldn't let them destroy everything humanity had worked for. The galaxy would never expect what would happen next, because Emily Foster wasn't just a medic. She was something far more dangerous, and she was about to make them regret ever underestimating her. Emily sat motionless in the dimly lit cell, her mind swirling with thoughts of escape, revenge, and the horrifying truth of her capture. The aliens who had taken her believed they had control. They thought she would break, that they could use her to achieve their dark goals. But Emily was more than just a medic. The humans were not as weak as they believed. Her mind raced. They wanted to harness her resilience, the strength of humanity itself. She had to find a way to turn that strength against them. She knew there had to be a weakness, something in their plan she could exploit. She just had to figure it out. For now, Emily focused on something more immediate. She needed to survive. As the hours passed, she began observing her surroundings more carefully. The room was small, cold, and sterile. It had no windows, just walls made of some dark metal she couldn't identify. There was a small bed with a thin mattress and a table bolted to the floor. The only other thing in the room was the strange door that locked her in. Footsteps echoed down the corridor outside her cell. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She stood up quickly, brushing the dust from her uniform. The footsteps stopped in front of her cell, and the door slid open with a hiss. 2 aliens entered. One was the tall, shadowy figure from before, the one who had told her she was the key to their plan. The other was smaller, but no less dangerous. Its yellow, reptilian eyes glowed in the darkness, and its claws clicked against the floor as it moved. The tall alien ignored her and walked to the table, where a small device lay. The other alien stood near the door, watching her with keen interest. "Dr. Foster," the tall alien said, its voice smooth and cold. "We have been patient, but we are ready to move forward with our plans." Emily stood still, her mind racing. This was it. They were about to begin whatever twisted experiment they had in mind. She had to do something, and fast. "You think you can control me," Emily said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded. "But you have no idea what you're dealing with." The tall alien turned its glowing eyes toward her, almost in amusement. "You still think you have a choice in this, don't you?" it said, stepping closer. "You are here because you have no choice. You will help us, or you will perish. But we are generous. We will give you the opportunity to prove your worth." Emily's stomach churned, but she refused to show any fear. They wanted her to break, to fall in line. But she had learned long ago that fear was the enemy. She had to stay strong. The aliens were dangerous, yes, but they were not invincible. And she wasn't about to let them use her to destroy humanity. "Why don't you just do whatever you want to do and get it over with?" Emily said, her voice laced with defiance. "You're wasting your time. You'll never control me." The tall alien's eyes narrowed. For a moment, it looked as if it might attack. But then, it seemed to reconsider. It straightened up and turned to the smaller alien. "Prepare her," it ordered. The smaller alien nodded and stepped forward. It moved with surprising speed, grabbing Emily's arms and forcing her toward the table. A strange device was strapped to the table, and Emily's heart raced as she realized what it was. Some kind of restraint. "This is your last chance, Doctor," the tall alien said. "You will help us, or we will make you. There is no escape, no hope for you." But Emily's mind was already working, her instincts kicking in. She knew she had to act quickly before they could bind her to the table. With a sudden burst of strength, she pulled her arm free from the smaller alien's grasp, using her legs to kick it away. It stumbled backward in surprise, giving her the opening she needed. Emily spun toward the tall alien, her eyes flashing with anger. "You think you can control me," she said, her voice low and steady. "You've made a big mistake." Before the alien could react, Emily grabbed a nearby metal rod that had been left on the floor. She swung it with all her strength, striking the alien across its chest. It let out a strange hiss of pain, stumbling backward. The smaller alien roared in fury and lunged at her, but she was faster. Emily ducked low and drove the metal rod into its side, knocking it off balance. The alien's shriek echoed in the room as it fell to the ground, its glowing eyes wide with shock. Emily wasn't finished. She kicked it aside, her breath heavy in her chest. The tall alien was still recovering from the blow, but Emily wasn't going to give it time to regroup. She sprinted toward the door, her heart pounding in her ears. The tall alien's voice boomed behind her. "You cannot escape. We are beyond your reach." But Emily wasn't listening. She was thinking only of one thing: survival. She had to get out. She had to warn humanity. The galaxy would never expect what was coming next, because Emily Foster was not just any prisoner. She was the one who was going to bring an end to their plans. With one last burst of strength, Emily reached the door. She slammed her hand against the control panel, praying that it would work. A soft beep echoed through the room as the door slid open. Without hesitation, she bolted out into the hallway. She had no idea where she was going, but she knew one thing for certain. She was not going to let these aliens win, and she was going to make sure they learned what it meant to mess with the wrong species. Emily's heart raced as she sprinted down the dark, unfamiliar corridor. Her mind was still processing what had just happened. She had managed to escape. She had fought back, even if it was only a small victory. The aliens were strong, but she had shown them that humans were more than capable of defending themselves. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she glanced over her shoulder, expecting the aliens to be right behind her. But there was nothing. The hallway was silent, the dim lights flickering overhead. It felt like the calm before the storm. The escape didn't feel real. It had all happened so quickly. 1 minute she was being restrained. The next she was free, running through the halls of a ship she knew nothing about. She had to keep moving. She couldn't let herself be caught again. There were lives on the line, and she couldn't fail. She rounded a corner, her boots slapping against the cold metal floor. She didn't know where she was going, but she couldn't stop. The ship was vast, and she had no idea how to navigate it, but she couldn't afford to slow down. The further she got from the holding cells, the better. She had to find a way to send a distress signal, to warn Earth that humanity was under threat. Her mind worked in overdrive, searching for any possible escape route. She had seen a few windows as she passed by, but they were all locked tight. There had to be a control room somewhere, a place where she could reach out for help. As she kept running, Emily's thoughts kept drifting back to the aliens. They had underestimated her. They thought she was just a medic, someone who would be easy to break. But she wasn't weak. She had learned to survive in situations like this. She had spent years on battlefields, saving lives and fighting alongside soldiers who had taught her resilience. And now, it was her turn to show the aliens just how powerful humanity could be. She rounded another corner and came face to face with a door that looked different from the others. It had a panel beside it, with a keypad and a series of flashing lights. Could this be it? The control room. Without thinking twice, she approached the door. Her hands trembled as she scanned the keypad, looking for any clue on how to open it. She didn't know the first thing about alien technology, but she had to try. Emily pressed a few random buttons, hoping for some sort of reaction. At first, nothing happened. She was about to give up when she heard a soft click. The doors slowly slid open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. Inside, there were several consoles lined up against the walls, glowing with strange symbols and patterns. She couldn't read any of them, but she knew that somewhere in this room, she could find a way to communicate with Earth. Her eyes landed on one console in particular. It was a little larger than the others, with a screen that flickered uncertainly. She took a deep breath and approached it. If she could just get this to work, she might be able to send a signal back to Earth. But she didn't have much time. The aliens would be looking for her soon, and she couldn't afford to be caught again. Emily pressed a few buttons at random, her fingers moving quickly. There was no way she was going to figure this out in time. But then, something unexpected happened. The screen on the console flickered again, this time showing a series of unfamiliar symbols, followed by a small text box. Yes, Emily whispered to herself, her fingers still dancing across the console. She tried to input a few more commands, just hoping that one of them would lead her to a way to communicate with Earth. A few tense seconds later, the screen finally shifted. It showed a single line of text, followed by a flashing button. Transmission ready. Her breath caught in her throat. This was it. She had done it. Emily quickly typed in the message she knew was most important. Humanity is under attack. Send reinforcements. We are not alone. She hit the send button with a shaky hand, praying that her message would reach home. It was a simple message, but it was all she could manage in the short amount of time she had. The screen blinked again, and then the transmission was complete. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway, growing louder. Emily's heart stopped. She quickly turned away from the console, her mind racing. There was no time to waste. She had to find a way out now. The door to the control room slid open, and two aliens stepped inside. They were the same ones from before, the tall one and the smaller reptilian alien. They have found her. Dr. Foster, the tall alien said, its voice cold and filled with contempt. You've made a grave mistake. Emily backed away slowly, her eyes scanning the room for an escape. There had to be another way out. You're too late, she said, her voice steady, despite the fear gripping her chest. The message is sent. Earth will know what's happening. You won't win. The tall alien narrowed its eyes. We shall see. Before Emily could react, the alien reached for a weapon at its side, a strange, glowing device that pulsed with an ominous light. But Emily was faster. In a swift motion, she grabbed a chair and threw it at the alien, knocking it off balance. The smaller alien lunged at her, but Emily dodged, using the chair as a shield. You're not going to stop me, she growled, her voice filled with determination. The aliens snarled, their eyes flashing with fury. But Emily didn't care. She had done her part. She had warned Earth. Now, The galaxy would learn just what humans were capable of, and they would never underestimate humanity again. Emily's heart pounded as the door slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing in the silent corridor. She had escaped the control room, but she was no closer to being free. The alien soldiers were sure to be after her, and now she had a new problem. Her message was out there, and she had no idea if Earth had received it. She stumbled down the hallway, her body aching from the brutal fight. She could still feel the burn in her muscles from all the running and dodging, but there was no time to rest. The message was out, but the galaxy had heard it, and now the real test was beginning. Could humanity fight back against an enemy so much more advanced than themselves? Her mind raced with the possibilities. Earth had always been known as a peaceful planet, a species that had stayed isolated for centuries, making little effort to explore the stars. But everything was changing now. Humanity had shown its strength in a way no one could have predicted. The alien ship's interior was a maze of corridors, each one identical to the last. Emily was unsure where she was heading, but she couldn't stop. Her focus remained sharp. She needed to find a way to signal Earth, to ensure they knew she was alive, and that she had done everything she could. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared across the ship. Red lights flashed from every corner of the hallway, casting everything in a crimson hue. It was the kind of alarm that signified serious danger, and it made Emily's stomach drop. They had found out. The aliens knew she had sent a message, and now they were searching for her. Her breathing became shallow as the realization hit her. Earth had no idea what was coming, and the consequences of this mistake could be disastrous. She had to warn them, but the clock was ticking, and she was trapped on a ship with no way out. She quickly ducked into a small side corridor, hoping to avoid detection. Her mind raced. What if the transmission was intercepted? What if the aliens had found a way to erase it before it reached Earth? Or worse, what if they found out the truth? What if they realized that humanity wasn't as helpless as they thought? The sound of heavy footsteps grew louder, and Emily knew the search parties were close. She pressed her back against the wall, trying to keep herself hidden in the shadows. She took slow, deliberate breaths, praying that her presence wouldn't be noticed. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps faded, but Emily didn't dare move. The aliens were everywhere now, and she needed a plan. Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice, an unfamiliar voice, low and calm. "Are you lost, Dr. Foster?" the voice asked. Emily's heart leaped into her throat. She slowly turned to find the source of the voice. It was another alien, one she hadn't seen before. This one was smaller, its skin pale blue, and its eyes glowing faintly with a soft, eerie light. It didn't seem like one of the soldiers, but its posture was commanding. "I'm not lost," Emily replied, her voice steady despite the rising panic. "I'm just trying to survive." The alien took a step forward, its eyes narrowing as it observed her. "Survival isn't your greatest concern, human. The message you sent, it's already causing a stir among the stars. You have no idea the forces you've just unleashed." Emily felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "What do you mean?" The alien's lips curled into a faint, almost pitying smile. "You don't know, do you? The galaxy is not as united as you may think. The species that are part of the Greater Council, they may have agreed to a certain peace for now, but there are factions, powerful factions that do not share the same sentiment. And when they learn what you've done, they will come for you. And for Earth." Emily swallowed hard. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. She had hoped that sending a message would bring help, that Earth would rally behind them. But she had no idea that it would be seen as a declaration of war. The alien's voice softened, but it still carried a certain finality to it. "You've awakened something far beyond what you were ready for, human." Emily felt a surge of anger rise within her. She clenched her fists, the pain in her body fueling her determination. "I don't care what you think you've awakened. I did what was necessary, and if Earth is going to fight, then I'll make sure they're ready." The alien stepped back, as if sensing her resolve. "You don't understand. You've just made your species a target. And the moment you decided to fight back, you sealed your fate." With that, the alien turned and disappeared into the shadows of the ship, leaving Emily alone once more. Her chest tightened as she processed its words. What had she done? She had never meant for this to escalate, but now there was no turning back. Earth was in danger, and she had just made it worse. The ship's alarms grew louder, and the footsteps resumed their approach. Emily knew time was running out. She couldn't stop now, not when everything she had worked for was on the line. She needed to get back to the control room. If she could just find a way to send another message, maybe she could warn Earth before the galaxy descended into chaos. As she pressed onward, her mind was consumed by a single thought. The fight for Earth had only just begun, and she had no idea what kind of war they had just unleashed. Emily's pulse quickened as the alien ship's corridors twisted and turned, each one more like a labyrinth than the last. She moved quickly, her breath coming in shallow gasps as the ship's alarms blared relentlessly. The forces on the ship were closing in on her. She could feel their presence, almost tangible in the cold, metallic air. But she couldn't stop now, not when Earth's survival was at stake. Every step she took was calculated, every sound amplified in the tense silence. She was deep within enemy territory, alone, and fighting to survive. Emily knew that the aliens were angry, frightened even by the message she had sent. They would stop at nothing to ensure that her signal never reached Earth. The transmission was too dangerous. It could awaken something far worse than anyone could have anticipated. She paused for a moment, hiding behind a bulkhead, listening to the footsteps drawing nearer. She needed to find the control room. She needed to get back to the place where it all started, the heart of the ship where the transmission had been sent. If she could get back to the system, she could send another message, perhaps one that would give Earth a fighting chance. But the more she thought about it, the more her hope faltered. She was no longer just a medic. She had become a symbol, a target. A soft hiss echoed through the walls, and Emily stiffened. She wasn't alone. Her eyes darted around the corridor. From the shadows, two alien soldiers emerged, their weapons drawn, their eyes glowing menacingly. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their mission was clear: capture or eliminate. Emily's heart raced. She was trapped. She had no weapon, no allies, only her wits and the small glimmer of hope that the message would somehow reach Earth. But the soldiers were already closing in. She had to act. With a burst of adrenaline, Emily dashed down the hallway, her footsteps light but fast. She could hear the soldiers behind her, their pursuit relentless. She turned a sharp corner, skidding on the smooth metal floors, barely avoiding their fire. A shot echoed, narrowly missing her as she sprinted forward. Emily's mind worked in overdrive. She needed to lose them. She couldn't afford to be caught now. She had to finish what she had started. She couldn't let Earth fall to the mercy of these alien invaders. She slid into another narrow passage, a smaller hallway that barely fit her. It was a gamble, but it was the only option. The soldiers' footsteps grew fainter, but she could hear them talking, cursing her, calling for reinforcements. She had to find a way to turn the tables on them. Emily's eyes scanned the walls as she ran. She spotted something, an access panel near the ceiling. Without hesitation, she jumped up, pulling herself onto a nearby pipe, and used her medical training to pry open the panel. Inside was a small but powerful terminal, likely used for ship maintenance. She didn't know if she could use it to send a message, but it was worth a try. She worked quickly, her fingers flying over the console, her heart pounding in her chest. Sweat dripped down her face, but she couldn't afford to stop now. The soldiers were still closing in, and if she didn't act fast, she'd be caught. Her eyes locked onto the screen, scanning the alien interface. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, but she understood the basics of technology. After a few frantic minutes of trial and error, she finally accessed a communication network. It was a long shot, but she typed in the coordinates for Earth, hoping, praying that the message would get through. The terminal beeped. A success. A signal was sent. But it wasn't just any signal. The message she sent wasn't a plea for help. It was a call to arms. She had no idea who would receive it, but she knew one thing. Earth's enemies were about to know just what they had awakened. The message would reach Earth, but it would also reach the enemy. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder again. The soldiers were near. Emily's heart stopped. She had done it. She had sent the message. But now she was out of time. There was no escape. The soldiers were closing in. The terminal blinked one last time, the screen showing the words, "Transmission sent." And then, the corridor went dark. The ship's power seemed to flicker. It was the beginning of something. Emily had just set a fire in the galaxy, one that would spread far beyond her control, and she couldn't help but feel that the worst was still to come. But she wasn't done yet. She had one final task: to survive. She was still alone, trapped in the belly of the alien ship, but now she knew something the galaxy didn't. Earth wasn't just a weak, isolated species anymore. Emily had sent the signal, and now humanity's firepower would come roaring back, ready to take on whatever the galaxy threw at them. Emily didn't know if she'd survive long enough to see it, but she had ignited something. A war, and a battle humanity was ready to fight. The ship's darkened corridors felt like a maze, and Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she pressed her back to the cold metal wall. She had done what she came here to do. She had sent the message, but now she was trapped. Every part of her screamed to keep moving, but exhaustion was taking its toll. She was surrounded by enemies who would stop at nothing to capture her, and yet the message she had sent was humanity's last hope. She tried to steady her breath, but the pounding of her heart was deafening. The soldiers were getting closer. She could hear their boots on the metal floor, their voices a low murmur of frustration. They were hunting her, but she wasn't just a medic anymore. She was something much more dangerous. She had awakened something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The aliens had underestimated humanity for far too long. They thought they could invade, enslave, and destroy, but they didn't realize the fierce spirit of survival embedded in every human being. Emily had just sent a message that would change everything. Her mind raced as she thought about Earth's response. She knew that Earth was not alone in the galaxy. The moment her signal was received, every human, every colony, and every ally who had been watching the skies would rally to their cause. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was far from helpless. It was time for them to pay for what they had done. But Emily wasn't finished yet. The footsteps were closer now. They were almost upon her. She couldn't let them catch her. She had to keep moving. With every ounce of energy left in her body, she bolted down the hallway, taking sharp turns, hoping to lose them in the ship's endless maze of metallic walls. But she knew it was a matter of time before they cornered her. And when they did, it would be the end. But Emily refused to give in. She had made it this far, and she wasn't going to let the galaxy's predators take her down. Not now. Not when humanity's chance at survival was so close. With a sudden burst of determination, Emily found herself in front of a large door. Her mind clicked into survival mode as she realized it was the bridge. The heart of the ship. This was where the alien command would be. If she could take control of the bridge, she might be able to sabotage their communications or even send a new signal to Earth. This was her last chance. There was no turning back. She reached out for the control panel beside the door, her fingers trembling. It was now or never. The aliens were close. She had no idea if the door would open, but she had to try. Her eyes scanned the alien interface, and with a final push of desperation, she triggered the door to open. To her surprise, the door slid open without resistance. Emily slipped inside, the cold air of the bridge hitting her like a slap. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she quickly assessed the room. It was a large chamber, filled with alien technology, blinking consoles, and intricate displays. In the center of it all was a massive command seat, with an alien sitting in it, completely unaware of her arrival. Emily didn't waste a second. She darted across the room, heading straight for the console. The alien commander was still facing away, absorbed in the ship's operations. She had one shot at this, and she wasn't going to miss it. With a swift motion, she pulled herself up to the console and began working quickly, her fingers moving across the controls. She didn't know what each button did, but she knew enough to send a signal to Earth, a signal that would be impossible to ignore. She felt a sudden surge of electricity as the ship's system connected to her interface. Emily's fingers flew over the keys, tapping in the coordinates for Earth and the message she had created earlier. She sent it again, only this time, the message was amplified. It was not just a call for help. It was a declaration. The galaxy had made a grave mistake. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The alien commander turned abruptly, his eyes wide with shock. Emily met his gaze for a moment, her chest heaving as she finalized the transmission. He opened his mouth to shout, but she was faster. With one last push of the button, the message was sent, and Emily could feel the weight of her actions. The message she had sent wasn't just for Earth. It was a warning to the entire galaxy. They had provoked the wrong species. With a final glance at the alien commander, Emily's body went rigid. The walls of the bridge seemed to pulse with the power of the message she had just unleashed. The ship's alarms blared again. The commander lunged for her, but she was ready. Emily twisted and threw herself into the heart of the control panel, causing sparks to fly. The alien ship shuddered under her movements. It was clear that the transmission had activated something far bigger than she could comprehend. But Emily had done her part. She had sent the message. Earth would answer. The galaxy would never forget what had just happened. The human spirit was not one to be crushed. The doors to the bridge slid open, and Emily turned toward the blast of fresh air that rushed into the room. The alien soldiers were just moments away from reaching her, but it didn't matter anymore. The battle for humanity's future was far from over. The war had just begun, and the galaxy would learn to fear humanity's wrath. With one final defiant breath, Emily faced the coming storm. The end was just the beginning.